seen my other shows. No. So it's next on the mic. Yeah. Hello, Samuel. Can you hear me?
Hi,
So I,
is the lag still there?
just a little bit, but we'll see what happens. Yeah, it's ladies. Is it still there? Like he's like,
Right.
yeah, it's still there. It's still a lag. It's okay. We'll see what happens. It'll probably clear up a little bit. Is it where you're sitting?
No, because I'm right on top of my router, so I'm kind of confused.
Well, then we'll just wait it out. Hello, everybody. I want to thank everybody
Yeah.
tonight. Next on the mic, I'm gonna ask all you guys to mute your mic so we won't have any lag back until we start talking. But we have three change agents on my show tonight. I'm so excited to have Mia Martinez. She's part of the Board of Education, and we have Julia Lynn and Samuel. Samuel, I don't want to butcher your last name, so you go ahead and pronounce it for me.
Boyson.
Boyson. Okay, so yeah, Samuel Boyson from the Youth Advocacy Council. So I'm so excited to have you guys here. So we adults have been talking a lot about young voters in Frederick. We've been talking about young voters globally, right? That has been a big issue about young voters of how they're voting, how they feel about voting, registering to vote, what the issues they think is important. Because I must say that you guys, your population is so vocal, and you guys are great advocates in the community. I mean, you guys advocate, protest, do things like that, and you guys get it done. I mean, you guys move the needle. So I think it's so important that we have your voices at the table when it comes to issues. So this is an open discussion. I want you guys to definitely jump in and tell me what you think. So we know that I will not say his name, one who was president in the past. We had a lot of people, young voters, did not participate, right? But then when Biden jumped in the race, wow, like the young voters, like really showed up. And so in 2020, we had about 52 to 55% of voters were young they were the younger population between the ages of 18 and 29. So can you guys tell me how important is it for your population to vote, and why?
I can go first.
Okay.
I think voting is essential for most young kids, and it's something that we learn in school. And just like my role, I feel like that's a great opportunity for kids to start to know how to vote, how to educate themselves, how to figure out what they look for in candidates, what they want to see, what they don't want to see. And so it's a great opportunity for kids to exercise their right. And so then moving on in their life, they can use that again once voting comes up. And then they can find that they're passionate about some things. And once they agree with someone, that they can represent their views in an accurate way, and they can represent them at a higher level. And that's what people look for. And that's why voting is so important, especially for young kids, because they are the future. And, their representatives are going to make differences that will affect them.
Anybody?
Yeah, sorry. So I completely agree with that. I think that everyone should be able to vote, and especially the younger generation, because a lot of politicians we see in office are like older, and they might not really represent the views of the younger people. And so in order to ensure that their voices are represented, they need to get out and vote.
I like that. So, you want to add in?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I feel like for our generation, especially growing up with something like the internet, we see lots of things very early on. And I think we had more access to education about certain topics. Well, at our age, I feel like when we are passionate about something, we're very adamant about it. So when it comes to voting, when there is something that we see as very dire, we will absolutely show out for it
Yeah,
by all
and so
means.
you guys all pointed on top three things. So Mia, you said that you guys learn about it in school about voting. And do you guys like how do y'all conversate with your friends about voting? Like, do you guys even talk about that? Like, do you guys talk about political issues? Like, how does that even come up in the conversation with your peers? Like, how does that even work?
I mean, I feel like, especially when elections come up, voting really does become a hot topic, and we hear so many of like our parents talking about it, and other, I guess, adult figures talking about it, and so it's what's relevant, and also, like you said, young people have gotten very involved in their community, and they've noticed things, and so it just becomes a pretty normal topic of conversation, I guess, for kids, and if they see something that's relevant to them and asking opinions, it's just conversation between kids.
And so me, Julia, you said that you would like to see younger people running. Now, I'm gonna. This is not a loaded question, but what would be the age of candidates? Like what age group? Like when you say me being like in my age group, I agree. Like there is a wiser politicians that definitely can't relate to like your issues, right? They're like they are very, they're politicians, but then when it comes to your issues, they're it's unrelatable. So what would you guys say like the age group? Like if you look at the mayor of Baltimore, he's in his 30s. So that's like young, right, to be a mayor. So what age group do you guys think that politicians will represent you?
I would say like 30 to around like 45. When I was referring to the older politicians, I mean like we have like the 70-year-olds and like the 80s and the 60-year-olds and who've been in office for like what 20, 30 years. So you know, that's not really a great idea, but yeah, they might be a little bit out of touch.
Yeah, yeah, and Samuel, you touched on the internet. So I know, like when I ask my kids, like what internet platform or like what social media, he's like, "Mom, our platform does not. Our generation don't use Facebook." I was like, "Wait, what?" They're not on Facebook. That's not how do we reach the younger population when it comes to social media? I think you're muted, Samuel. Yep, there you
Okay,
go.
all right. I think platforms like Twitter and Instagram have been very effective as far as
Mhm.
spreading the word about certain ideas and concepts among generation. And I just feel like we always like getting things the instant something happens. So we have our initial thoughts and then we discuss with people on the spot to develop our views and have a more corroborated sense of something going on. So that's why our generation really appreciates about these type of
And Twitter is definitely like right now. I think Twitter gets the news before the news gets to news. Like once it already happens, the news is like they're like maybe a day behind. So it's definitely Twitter, and it's so everybody hear that, right? So everybody, you cannot get to the younger people by Facebook. Like it's just not gonna happen. So and I'm not Twitter savvy, so I don't know. How do you guys feel about TikTok? Like is that like something that you guys focus on also?
I think it's fun to see like candidates interact on TikTok. I think it's
Yeah.
just it's a way for kids to realize that, oh, they're also another human. It's not just someone that they're completely out of touch with. I think it just gives them a sense of normalcy.
Yeah, I have an 8-year-old and she's like, "Mom, do a TikTok with him." I'm like, "What?" So I'm still learning TikTok. I'm trying. I don't know. Like, so when I looked at the numbers and percentage, they stated that 87% voters were Black, 83% were Asian, and 73% were from the Latinx community, and 51% were from the white community. Could you tell me why the Asian, the Latinx, and the Black, which I have all of you on that screen that support that nationalities. Why do you feel that they are more vocal with politics than the white population?
I think that they're not as represented in government, and so voting is definitely a way for them to make sure that their voices are heard, being a minority in this country.
Yeah, Samuel, you go ahead, Samuel.
I think when it comes to communities of color, I feel like our lives are very much trivialized with every single election. So it's very easy to be passionate about getting what you want done with your vote. Like quite literally, the administration, even the previous administration, literally every administration, our rights are literally at jeopardy. Whether it's racial minority or gender minorities, sexual orientation, whatever it be, like that is quite literally the case. So yeah.
And so you would definitely want politicians that look like you, like that they can, and that they can definitely represent you because they know what your nationalities are going through. I would assume, is that what it is?
I
For
completely
sure.
agree. And to add a little bit on that, I feel like it's nice to see someone who also looks like you and that they, come from maybe a similar background and they're able to represent your views. And it sort of establishes a little bit more comfortability
Mm-hmm.
between voters and their candidates. So, yeah.
Now, due to COVID, the elections looked a lot different. And being that snail mail was the drive for elections, and we had a lot of concern about young voters going to the post office and putting in their vote. How do you guys? So, and they've been discussion that the elections coming up, or they're moving also to mail, right? Because a lot of people still haven't had their vaccines. They're still scared to go out into the public. First, how do you guys feel about the COVID and how Frederick has been dealing with the COVID and then vaccines? Because I know my son is like, when are we going to get our shots? So how does your population feel about not being able to get the vaccine in COVID? Nobody feels.
Personally, personally speaking, I feel as though at first it felt very slow over here, but I think now they're starting to pick up a bit. Like we're starting to progress through phase two, starting this week, and then the part of phase two in the next week or so. So I think we're finally starting to get traction with that, as well as the federal. Get everybody up first, so that's definitely going. And then in regards, I feel like even in 2020, people were very passionate about in person as well, just because they wanted to make sure that their vote was being processed and through. As much as, among the older generation, where it's like, I want to see that ballot go through and process. See that really going away even in the midst of COVID, as we've seen.
I would add, as far as the vaccine, it's definitely been a slow process. But then again, when I think about it, this is all completely new. I guess mass vaccination hasn't really happened for a global pandemic before. But yeah, and a lot has to do with the state and how that's distributed. So definitely advocacy has been important, and we've heard lots of advocacy from teachers, from the board, which still helps. So yeah.
Do you guys think early voting is important? Would younger population do early voting or go stand in line?
I think that they would prefer early voting just because it can be like extremely time consuming to stay in a line for that long.
I agree. I did early voting, and I did not want to stand in line. So I did not want to stand in line. Now let's talk about issues. So the issues in the younger population. What will be your top 3 issues in your population in your circles of what you feel is important?
I think social advocacy, environmental concerns, and probably like women's reproductive rights. Those would probably be my top 3.
That's interesting. I didn't think you were going to say that one. What would be your Samuel? What would be your topics?
No, personally, I was thinking of reproductive rights as part of social justice as a whole. So social justice as a whole, including women's rights, which women's rights include sexual reproductive rights. Um, Also, environmental concerns, evidently. And I think also government regulation on certain industries, as the internet, and furthermore, will be big deals as we progress.
Yeah, I agree with all of those topics as well. Although I will say, I recently have been learning more about environmental aspects. I guess I just wasn't very aware of them before. And once you do realize things about the environment, it becomes very interesting to dive deep into it. So that's been a big one recently for me. That's been added in that previously wouldn't have really made a difference, I guess.
I think environment has definitely been on the list for younger population. Like my 8-year-old was like, Mom, I want to like put together a whole like cleanup day and like involve my elementary students and not the kindergartners because they'll get hurt. So can we just do like first grade and up, and they can get like hero bucks? Like I'm like, why would you give them hero bucks? You know what she said? That's a lot of work. They can't get paid cheap. Like we got to give them. I'm like, wow. Like she cares about how much she like pays them hero bucks. Not even real money, but she knows like the value of hero bucks in school. So that's like impressive to me from coming from a 9-year-old. So it's definitely something that you guys are definitely talking about, even from elementary, like how to clean up the environment. And definitely when we have like so many like what's going on weather-wise globally, like Texas, that was insane. I don't think they've ever seen anything like that. And a lot of older politicians wouldn't think the environment even had an effect on that. It was just, oh, that's something that happened. But it's definitely having to do with the environment. Now, the women's reproductive, that is very interesting that you guys would bring that up. I have never heard of a young population dealing with. Tell me, why is that important to you? Like you have to own your own body. Is that what it is? Is it like I should be able to do what I want with my body? And we have a lot of, I mean, when it comes to the Black community, a lot of women die from childbirth. I mean, the maternal rate and the maternal percentage of Black women being able to have a successful childbirth is not successful. And I know that when I in Frederick, they do a lot of epidurals and a lot of like C-sections, and that is when it's not necessary, right? So it's like those things have to do with maternal. So why is that important to you?
I think it's important because people should have their own say in their own body. And I also think that, like, with the recent rise of, like, sexual assault and rape and all of that people believe that they should have a choice in, if they want to proceed or not. And so for a lot of, like, I won't generalize this, but like for people who are like, I mean, like pro-life, some people still support abortion even in cases of like rape or incest, and
Mhm.
I think that people don't want that to happen, and like they want to have a choice.
Yeah, I agree. I think we should be able to have a choice of what we want to do with our bodies. And so let's talk about locally. We've had a lot of things happen locally in Frederick. Like do you guys agree that Frederick, or disagree that Frederick is becoming more progressive, and from what you guys have seen? And do you like that Frederick is becoming more progressive?
Um, I agree that Frederick has definitely gotten more progressive, especially when you look at Frederick 20 years ago versus now. By a
Mm-hmm.
large margin, has gotten progressive. However, I do feel like there is a bit of a barrier that is also a big deal when it comes to our generation. I feel like, especially when it comes to people that experience oppression for themselves, whether it's racial, by gender, by this, by that, you can tell when somebody is saying something for the sake of saying something, and when it's genuine and they actually have a drive for something. So, as much as there is a whole progressive push, there are people that do it of the look of it, and then there are people that are actually passionate about it. So, yeah.
I think that Frederick has become more progressive, but I think one of the main factors of that is the increasing like diversity and more people moving who are people of color. And I mean, I like diversity, and our country is extremely diverse. And so I think that um, attracting people from like all sorts of backgrounds to Frederick is a good thing.
For sure. And I feel like in the past couple of years, Frederick has come together more as a community than ever, especially now. I've seen so many times that of the community coming together for um, a person or a cause or anything like that, just supporting each other. And so that's something that I've noticed recently in the past that's been coming together.
And I agree with that. It's definitely, I'm not from Frederick, but I've been in Frederick for 9 years. And it definitely has changed within the 9 years I've been here. So I know the people that have been born and raised here have seen a tremendous change in diversity. And not only are we becoming more diverse, but we've had some monumental things happen in Frederick. I mean, you can just think about the Black Lives Matter protests in the march. That was huge. That made like outside news, like how many people we had that were involved with that. And we had the 287G issues are going on, and now we have the violence in the Asian community. So those are three like topics that are all within the nationality diversity. And so let's talk about 2021 is the mayors and the alderman election, right? And I think that it's so important that the younger population definitely gets involved in that, in that election. And you guys, Julia, what you go to Walkersville, and Mia, you go to Brunswick, and Samuel, you go to Frederick High. So we have two county schools and one city school. So these elections are going to affect your school in some way. And one of the biggest concerns is about education and the diversity in our schools. I know when I asked my son, like, how many Black teachers or how many teachers of color has he seen, and he will say out of the time he's been here since elementary, he's probably only had 2 Black teachers. How do you guys feel like when it comes to electing the right officials and getting the education more diverse in the curriculum and in the teachers? How important is that to you?
I think it's something that's extremely important for kids, and they've voiced it as well. It's something I'm a part of the racial equity committee, and it's something that we talk about often is the curriculum. And so I've been able to talk to kids from my school about it. And we talk about not only the curriculum, but just issues within the school. And so it's something that needs improvement for sure. And something that should never be settled on because the world is constantly changing. So yeah, it's definitely something to improve upon.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, coming from the Asian American community, I think that our curriculum does not touch base on the history of Asian Americans at all. And, a part of the reason why there's like so much racism against Asians is because I think like a big part is that people are not educated enough on this, and it's not a topic that's talked about. Like the Chinese Exclusion Act, the extra taxes, the requiring citizens to carry paperwork, and all of that. And it's not covered, and yeah, that needs to be approved or improved on. And I also think like for topics about slavery and like to that regard, it's brushed over and it's not talked about in depth. And I think that it should be talked about more.
Okay, yes, I agree thoroughly with Julia's point. Like, I feel like some things are overstressed and some things are not given the same attention that they should be given. Like, we spend like 3 years of our lives learning about the Holocaust, but then we don't learn about the Congolese genocide, how many people in the Congo under King Leopold, or we're taught that Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. Like, it's small things like that kind of show like there is this prioritization of certain worldly events and that's up under the rug. And it's very weird where we have to wait until we get to college or late into adulthood before we realize how it literally affects our society today. So I think there needs to be more diversification and more thorough and precise education and many perspectives put into play whenever we teach about things, especially like social studies or English that we tend to use and read about.
I agree with everything that you guys said, and I definitely think it's important to have more diversity in our schools, in our curriculum. How would you hold your elected officials that are running for office to make sure that they do that? And how would you get your young voters and the people and your peers to make sure they register and vote to make sure that, like they are holding our elected officials accountable?
I can speak in regards to like getting people to vote. I think that schools should hold like voter registration fairs and for like upperclassmen who are not registered to vote, like we should help and assist them with that registration process.
I completely agree with that. I think that that's an awesome idea, and it really just promotes learning how to vote because I feel like a lot of kids who may not be as educated on topics sort of see it as intimidating and then just think, oh, I don't know how to complete it. Maybe I just won't, or just don't have people who they're willing to reach out to help them. And so I feel like having an environment where they feel comfortable in would really help in that.
We have more city halls. I think like we brought this up in the Youth Advisory Council prior to the pandemic, but we were trying to have voter registration drives and like bigger park, but we're also bringing up the idea like we should encourage these leaders to be at places where students usually attend to. It's not like during the school day, and obviously give these spaces to both Republicans and Democrats and everybody in between. But have these spaces that children are very familiar with in order to get them engaged in government, even if they can't vote in that instance, they'll have that exposure there and have them see the importance of that type of thing for themselves.
So all of you guys gave great ideas, and I definitely like the voter registration. When it comes to being for voter registration fairs at the schools and voter registration education, and being where young people are at. Now, here's a trick question. I don't know where the young people are at. I don't think a lot of people know. I mean, like, it's not like we have the best malls, so they're not hanging out the malls. So it's like, it's not. I mean, when I was younger, I mean, like I told you before, I was hanging out at the beach in the mall. Like, we don't have a beach, so it's like, it's especially with technology. I don't even think young people even go out very much. I mean, we don't have a skating rink, so it's like, do they hang out? I used to hang out at the skating rink. They don't hang out at the skating rink. I mean, so where is it? Do I have to go to a house party? I don't.
I would definitely say, I mean, maybe not right now with restrictions and everything, but sports games.
Yes. Okay.
One. I know so many kids show up to those, and because they show up to support their school. So it's a community that they have there, and so many kids feel so passionate about it. And so I think it's an awesome environment. It's where kids are together, they're happy, and they'd be willing to learn about something. And if you show that you care enough to show up to a game to support your community, that I think that means a lot to a lot of kids.
Well, everybody heard that. I think I'm ahead of the game because I actually have a son that plays sports. So I'm always at the sports game. So yeah, I think sports are bringing everybody together, right? Like, when I would go to football games, I would see so many people there, and definitely like basketball. I don't go to basketball games, but I guess you're right. Now that I think about it, I think sports is like the place that kids do hang out at, and I know they don't hang out downtown. I mean, it's not like a place to go. So
find a lot of people downtown, actually. Like, it's like a very popular place. So
where is it? Where is it?
Like downtown, like people walking by like the creek or just like Baker Park. Yeah.
Yeah, down. I mean, you guys, do y'all hang out downtown? Like, I don't. You do hang out downtown? Yeah. I don't.
Yeah.
I go. I eat a lot downtown. The food is good, so downtown is good. So let me ask you a question when it comes to voter. I've heard young voters go, I'm not voting. I'm going to vote liberal, or I'm going to vote. Not liberal, but I'm going to vote independent. So how do you guys feel about independent voters and voting independent, not voting Democrat or Republican, but voting independent?
Obviously, people are very passionate about the candidate that is running independent, if that is the case. But I feel like in this country, we also have to consider how bicameral everything. I mean, literally blue or red, and it's kind of like, well, unless you have really witnessed a big push for an independent candidate that is, I don't think the way that the U.S. is set up is very plausible. I can really see it happening. However, I don't know. I feel like the most effective way to have an independent person come into a position of power is to have them run as part of the party that is most aligned to, and then push them to have that position, like Bernie Sanders. But even then, when it comes to having an independent position, people will find your base very radical either way. So it's very hard to really come about that even now.
I would agree. Ultimately, I think that people should vote for whoever they think is best, no matter what party the candidate is from. But Samuel's completely right. It is very two-party, and so it does become difficult. But ultimately, I would say for anyone to vote for whoever they feel is best. Not necessarily, I feel like independent candidates could take that route of switching to whichever party they feel mostly aligns with their views, just because not everyone is going to be strictly 100% agreeing with everything that their party advocates for. So there's still going to be people who would support you. I think that's an important note to consider. But yeah.
I think a big reason of why independent candidates don't get voted for is because of the two-party system. And so people feel like they have to vote Democrat or Republican. And there can be better candidates than the two that like you end up with. And so that's why if we have like ranked choice voting or something, people don't have to vote, for this candidate just because they're a Democrat, or for this candidate just because they're Republican, and they can vote based on like policy, because politics is so like divided and polarizing, and we don't see a lot of bipartisanship. And so I think that we should get an independent in office. I don't necessarily like how divided we are, and it's not about Democrat versus Republican at this point.
I agree. So I majored in politics. I got a degree in politics, and independent voters are great, but they do it does ruffle things up when it becomes Democrat or Republican. And I agree, you should definitely vote for people that are about your views. But I also think the younger population also needs to understand how powerful they can change things. Like, if that candidate is not like saying what you need, or going to do what you need, you can definitely encourage them to be like, listen, you need to pay attention to these issues. Like, these issues are important to us. And because I know like a lot of people go, I'll vote independent because they're hearing what I say. I'm not going to vote at all because I don't even think my vote's going to count, right? You always hear people go, I'm not going to vote because they're not going to hear me, which is so not true, right? Like, they definitely hear you, and they definitely want what you want, right? Because I have to say, like, me being in the 40s, I know that it's you guys that's going to carry the torch when I'm gone. So it's like those issues that are important to you guys have to be important to us, right? Because you guys are going to be the ones to like push that and make and change the world. And so I definitely think it's important that we encourage, or you encourage your peers to vote and say, listen, put your thought, you put your what you think is important on the table, and challenge the candidates and say, how do you feel about this, and how are you going to change this? And not only challenge them, is be part of the change, right? So when we talk about being part of the change, how do you advocate in your community, and how do you get your peers to advocate in your community when it comes to changing? Like, for example, when you go to Annapolis, do you guys think it's important to go to Annapolis and definitely voice your opinions when it comes to policies and things like that and political issues?
100%. Last year, I was able to go to Annapolis and talk to some senators and delegates regarding the Kerwin Commission. That was huge, very important to me. I was also able to speak at a panel as a student panelist in regards to the blueprint. And it made a difference. It definitely made a difference. There were lots of people after. There were great conversations after. There were great conversations with the delegates and senators, and Frederick County Association of Student Councils typically takes a field trip to Annapolis, which last year I was able to organize, and we were able to talk about legislation that was important to us regarding testing, the Kerwin Commission, anything of those sorts. And students came prepared. They had lists of concerns that they had. And the delegates had to schedule time to meet with us and listen to our concerns. And we had those conversations. And I feel like those conversations are exactly what make a difference, because they were able to give us insight on, oh, maybe this isn't something that you should take here, but maybe bring to an individual board of education, and helping us sort of resolve solutions and make sure that we're approaching things in the right way, and that way they know what's important to us. And we were able to keep in touch after, and it was truly an eye-opening experience.
And I think it's important for you for politicians want young people at the table. Like we know, like they want you guys at the table, and I hope that you guys are able to express that to your peers that they want them at the table. Like Mia said, like when she was in Annapolis, like they were like, yes, like what do you got to say? Like, so it's they want to hear you guys' voice. Now you guys are 11th grade and 12th graders. I was just having this discussion with a friend of mine about how Frederick is expensive. It's becoming more expensive, and people cannot work and live here. Now that you're going to be graduating soon, and going off to college and into your next chapter of your lives, what does it look like you guys coming back to Frederick and applying what you've learned in Frederick after higher education? We're going to be very transparent. Like, do you go, yeah, I'm going to come back because I'm going to have lots of money? Or I'm going to be like, no, I'm going to go where the money's at. How does that look for you?
Personally, I would say I wouldn't really see myself coming back to Frederick. Just not necessarily money-wise, just because I would like to experience new places. And I think that's what a lot of my friends, at least, are looking towards. But Frederick is very up and coming, if you will. Definitely not as, I guess, expensive as Montgomery County. But not really sure if I see myself completely coming back.
Anybody else?
I'd say as somebody who's been born and raised here, I'd say that Frederick has been a very family-friendly place and a good place to raise a family, which I can always appreciate. And I think it's going to stay away for a while. However, personally, I do not see myself staying in Frederick because I feel like Frederick is one of those places where it's kind of like, it's very like, you have everything you need here, so it's not like you, like, I don't know, it's kind of like, once you've experienced your out of here, you don't see too much to get into within the city after, so it's like, let's go somewhere else. There's, I feel like Frederick is very like American in the way that it is, like, you know, and you kind of want to see the more extreme parts of the area. So it's not like it's something bad that Frederick has inherently. It's just kind of like, you know, we want to explore so much more, I guess. I don't know.
For me, I think that I would stay in Maryland, but I don't know about Frederick specifically. Like, I like Frederick and it's a nice place and all, but I don't know if it's like the best. Actually, no, I take that back. I think I could possibly see myself here if it would be a good place for me to locate my business here.
I agree. Like, I'm from, like I was telling you guys, I'm from Miami. So like that's like the place to like work and live. Like you got everything. And I agree that like Frederick is very family oriented, and I always encourage students definitely to go outside and explore new places. And when you want to get married and have a family, you come back to Frederick because it's very family oriented. But when you're like exploring the world, you go in for college and go explore and go all those other places and see the world. And so I want to know, like, how do you guys feel about the elections coming up? How do you feel about it? We have a lot of, and then 2022, I mean, you have so many candidates that are going to be running. It's going to look so different. Have you guys talked about that? How demographically the elections are going to look in the next 2 years? And how are you guys going to get involved with that and get your peers involved?
I am very intrigued by the upcoming elections personally, especially within the mayoral and alderman elections that are coming up. I feel like obviously there's been some controversies within the past couple of months that I will not personally speak on, but I think when it comes to people in Frederick, people really want to seek the policy that's going to be in place, not just the black and white of it. I feel like, especially within our generation, we're not too big on the whole label thing, like, okay, this is Republican, this is Democrat, this is that, we're more about, okay, what's the point? Like, what policy are you really pushing? Because I feel like I think especially in education, we've been taught how rhetoric works. And I feel like, as we've seen, especially in 2016 and 2018, you see how rhetoric has been able to easily persuade people, and we're just kind of like, this is not it at all. So,
Mhm.
like, we are more about, okay, what's the meat of it? Like, what really, like, in it for us, really?
Yeah, yeah. I agree. I agree. Julia, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I think it'll be a very interesting year because we're seeing for the first time, I think, a 20-year-old candidate running for mayor, and that will be an extremely just interesting thing to watch.
Do you think that's too young to run for mayor? Do you feel like that's too young?
Um,
Be honest.
not
Like can a 20-year-old think
like people are still like developing at 20, so I
yeah.
think it can be a good experience for them. I don't know if they're like experienced enough to be a mayor, but you know what? Young, let's not put an age on things. It's okay.
Right. I mean,
I think
go ahead,
sorry, I'll
Samuel.
just say inherently the age thing shouldn't be a big deal. But I feel like it's very good to have, if we were to have somebody that young with the policy that you want to see, because I feel like young people are very adamant about what they want. I would say go for it if you are that passionate about the candidate. But again, there's also that, you could be. It's always, of course, you could be very apprehensive about it because, of course, 20 years old. I mean, you don't even have a bachelor's degree,
Right,
so
right.
that could be very scary, and I'd be hesitant too, even as a younger person. So
Yeah, I don't think age is the issue. I wouldn't say that. I would just say the thought process and the choices that, like, I know um I think the thought process when it comes to like uh when it comes to like the what decisions to make at 20, it's huge, like, right, like, and for a whole city, like, that's a lot for a whole city. And so you want to make, I know at 20 I was not making the right choices. I was just like, I could be easily influenced at 20. So you definitely have to, especially when it comes to politics, you definitely have to be strong-willed and strong-minded and very focused. So I agree, age is not the issue. It's just how we process everything in our thoughts, right? So I would definitely I'm excited about even a 20-year-old. Like, I'm excited about people putting their names in hats and being very, like, if you have that in you, put it out there, right? So I would like to ask you guys, what are you going to do? Are you guys registered to vote? And if you are not registered to vote, are you going to get registered to vote? And how are you going to get other people registered to vote?
so I am registered to vote, and I will be 18 by the time the primaries come around. I don't know where I'm going to college yet, so I'll have to see if I need to get the absentee ballots and all that type of stuff. But I aim to participate in that, especially as both Julie and I can attest, we've been very active in so we can make more informed decisions. And I think especially for us to city committee, we could easily talk to other people about as we diversify people that we have the conversations with, we can formulate better discussions with them. So
I am registered to vote. I registered to vote when I got my permit. So fun stuff. And I've gotten my peers to make sure to check to see if they were registered, and like I showed them the link and everything, and it's up to them to register. But I will continue to push them. But I think that with our position on the Youth Advisory Council, we have connections to the city, and then the city can also work in conjunction with like the schools and stuff to make sure that the youth are like educated about voting and know how to vote and know how to register.
Well, I myself will definitely be using you guys' ideas. I think those are great ideas. I love young ideas and how to like engage. And like I said, my son's your guys' ages, and so I definitely know how important it is. And I definitely hope I see you guys on the campaign trail and getting out there in the community. And I'm excited about what you guys are going to do in our community, and excited about you going to college. And hopefully that I can keep up with you guys and be like, yay! and just I just pour into you guys and whatever you're doing in our community and with the peers and with the younger population, and just keep doing what you're doing. And we will definitely work together on so I'm pretty sure we'll see each other again and in the community somewhere. And if you guys ever want to get into politics and come back to Frederick, get in politics, I hope that too. So and make a change in your community. And good luck to you guys. Do you guys want to add anything else before we go? No? How are you guys liking
thank you for having us, especially as Youth Advisory Council members. I think our voices definitely, I'm overjoyed to have a platform like this to speak on, especially with your audience as well. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. And so how are you guys liking online school? You like it, or you want to go back to school?
I personally miss my teachers. I miss my friends. I went back to school yesterday for the first time to take my SATs. So yeah, I just miss the building and I miss the people, and I can't wait for the day that I can like go back and just have a normal school year. But I'm grateful that I've been able to do online school, because I know that people have been issues with like you know, having access to technology, and for that I'm very grateful.
Yeah, I agree. And Samuel, are you ready to go back to? Did you go back to school yet? You went back to school, yes? You go.
Yeah, I do the hybrid model at Frederick High, and it's been cool to see people in person again. I mean, some classes have been very empty because there is a choice between hybrid and just being virtual right now. I really do miss the immersive and conversational piece of school. That's been so incredible, and like pleasant until March. You know, all for me going to next semester, all of them have been saying that we're going to be doing in-person classes, so I'm excited for that, especially in the college year.
Yeah, I definitely think it's important that you guys go back, especially the high schoolers. I've been hearing that the high schoolers have a harder time. Like they really want to get back into school because some kids are just struggling in high school, and some are knocking out the box, but a lot of them are struggling when it came to internet and online schooling. So I'm very happy that you guys get the opportunity to go back to school, especially if you're a senior, and it's important. I mean, that's your last year. That's your last hurrah. So you definitely want to get that last year out and be happy. So hopefully you guys get that. And thank you so much. I am so honored to have you guys here. And you guys are awesome. Thank you so much. And have a great night. Go do some schoolwork.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.